Okay, Alexander, let's talk about Marie Yovanovitch, the former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine. And here we have the boomerang, not of Russiagate, but of Ukraine Gate. And we all remember Yovanovitch. She was like the mainstream media neoliberal hero of the day during the impeachment trials with her testimony and her quote unquote her bravery standing up to Trump and her integrity and her honesty. Alexander, she was testifying during those impeachment hearings. She also gave closed door testimonies as well. And lo and behold, guess what? She was lying. And she was protecting who else but Joe and Hunter Biden, who were up to all kinds of no good in Ukraine with that famous, infamous company we all know now, which is Burisma Holdings. We've been reporting on this since 2014 on Burisma and what they've been up to. We've been reporting about Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and what they've been up to in Ukraine since 2014 and the coup. And Yovanovitch said it many times that she had no idea what was going on with Burisma. She called it, quote unquote, on October 11th, 2019, quote, it just wasn't a big deal when she was asked about Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and Ukraine and Burisma. It wasn't a big deal. She said she didn't have an idea as to the severity of what was happening with Burisma. She was unaware that it was such an important story. She said she rarely engaged with the company or with any of the people involved in the Burisma scandal. But now, because of a Freedom of Information Act, we now know the truth. And let me take you to an article by John Solomon from the site Just the News and read you a paragraph as to what's going on. Quote, but newly unearthed State Department memos obtained under the Freedom of Information Act show Yovanovitch's embassy in Kiev, including the ambassador herself, was engaged in several discussions and meetings about Burisma as the gas firm scrambled during the 2016 election and transitioned to settle a long-running corruption investigation and polish its image before President Trump took over. Alexander, further on down in the article, it notes that Yovanovitch sent upwards of 160 emails regarding Burisma, Biden, Joe Biden, and Hunter Biden. I think she knew a lot as to what was going on in Ukraine, what was going on with Burisma, what was going on with sleepy, creepy Uncle Joe and his son.
Well, of course she was. But let's just, before we unpack all of that, let's just remind ourselves of certain things that were happening in not so long ago, just a few weeks, months ago, during those extraordinary and bizarre and weird and ridiculous and phony impeachment proceedings. Remember who is being built up by the neoliberal media as the great heroine. I mean, this is Marie Yovanovitch. She was the great, impartial, impeccable, apolitical, professional, person. The foreign service officer of tremendous integrity who was coming along and saying it as it was, and who had been hounded out of her job by all these evil intrigues supposedly carried out by Rudy Giuliani and Trump's insistence. So she was being built up in this incredible way, and one of the people who was coming in, as I so well remember, for ferocious criticism and abuse, who was having his reputation trashed every day. You can find column inches about this, was John Solomon. John Solomon, was said to have got too close to Giuliani, that he was also a paranoid, that he was a conspiracy theorist, that he was talking things that were simply not true. I mean, they're going after Solomon all the time. And of course, one of Solomon's crimes was that he had broached issues about Yovanovitch. He had said that the embassy, the Ukrainian embassy, the US embassy, Kiev, had been involved in protecting various people in Ukraine And there'd even been a list, in fact, of people that she'd given the Ukrainian prosecutor who were not to be touched. This is all said to be completely untrue. And, Yovanovitch is this wonderful person, and Solomon is this bad person, this bad journalist who's lost his way in some fashion. Well, now what do we discover? We discover that, in fact, Solomon was right about Yovanovitch all along. She was, contrary to what she said before Congress, in let us remember impeachment proceedings. This wasn't just any, coming along to give testimony to get to Congress about some issue, foreign policy, whether we should support Ukraine, in its agricultural subsidies or something of that kind, the kind of things, that our congressional overwatch committees will ask for information about. This was the impeachment of the President of the United States. She was a star witness, and she came along to Congress as a witness in those proceedings and said that Burisma Holdings, this absolutely critically important Ukrainian company, the company which Donald Trump and Zelensky discussed in that telephone call, which was the original reason for the impeachment, that company, an investigation into which Donald Trump had supposedly asked Zelensky to initiate, this company, which employed at a huge salary Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, she said, in those proceedings, in those impeachment proceedings, into Congress, I didn't really know anything about them. I got a briefing just before I'm here to give evidence about it. I'd read some press reports, but it wasn't a big issue. It wasn't a big story. I didn't really know. And in fact, what do we actually discover? She sent hundreds of emails about it. She'd met with lobbyists, American lobbyists, acting for this company in connection with the various criminal probes which had been brought against Burisma Holdings, the same company, as I said, which Hunter Biden was a director of, that she'd met with these lobbyists, that she'd read hundreds of pages of documents or been sent hundreds of pages of documents by these lobbyists connected to Burisma Holdings, and we're being asked to believe we've been asked to believe by this person that she actually knew nothing about it and that it wasn't a big deal. Well, she wasn't telling the truth. Now, whether she was literally lying, well, I leave that to the congressional investigators. I understand that the Senate Judiciary Committee is looking to call her to give evidence again, or at least wants to find out what was going on. Because, to be honest, to me, this looks terrible. Whatever she was up to, she wasn't telling the truth.